Should homeschooling be banned to protect kids? 0207 862 2222 is the number. We're asking follow the tragic case of 10-year-old Sara Sharif, who died following years of serious and repeated violence in her own home. Her father, Urfan Sharif, and stepmother, Bay-nish Batool, were yesterday found guilty of her murder, while her uncle Faisal Malik, who lived at the family home in Surrey, was convicted of causing or allowing her death. Now, in March last year, teachers alerted social services about bruising to Sara's face. Weeks later, Sara's father and stepmother removed her from class to be homeschooled, and she was found dead that August. Now, the Children's Commissioner, Dame Rachel de Souza, said allowing this to happen was madness and has called for major changes.
Clearly she was picked up by the school, well done to the school who recognised the abuse, referred her, and then she was taken into home education. We should have a law in this country, both who is home educated, we need a register, but also any child who is at risk of abuse should not be allowed to be educated at home.
But do we go even further than that, further than what was proposed there, and end homeschooling altogether, just to ensure that Britain's children have eyes on them at all times? Andy, what do you think?
I think this is obviously a desperately disturbing and extreme case. I know that there are some cases with children who have particular learning disabilities, for instance, where parents feel forced, or children who are victims of very extreme cases of bullying, who feel forced to homeschool their children. I understand that. If I were a dad, I think that would be the hardest thing, is seeing my child going to school and being unhappy, also very difficult. But I do think that there is something suspicious about parents in other circumstances who decide to effectively remove their child from society. School is part of society. It's about learning to be with other children. It's about being part of British culture. It's about learning viewpoints that maybe your parents don't always agree with. That is life. And if a parent is taking their child out of school because of their religion or because of their sensibilities or because they don't agree with certain parts of our culture or whatever the reasons might be, I think there's a suspicion there. By the way, I'm not making a point necessarily there about race, because there are people who take children out of school because they are they like to live in nature and they want their children to understand nature and they want to remove their child from society and politics and that side of things.
Off-grid.
It's not necessarily a religious, cultural thing. But for whatever reason, I think there's something suspicious about parents wanting to remove their child and hide their child from reality.
You think there's a controlling element? Lynn, you were homeschooled for a little while, weren't you? Do you think there was a controlling...
up until the age of 12.
Do you think there's... So the whole way up until the age of 12?
Well, initially, up till about 8, my mum did it alone. And then she realised I was only child. We lived in a very remote village outside of Newmarket, Gaisley. And many people suggested, because I don't have siblings, try and see other like-minded individuals and have maybe a homeschool that's still like that environment with other like-minded parents. So then after about 8, then there was a few mothers and fathers that got together, and then we were all homeschooled under this sort of premise. And I don't think the system at that time was hardened to check up. It was quite an unusual environment that I lived in. It was quite religious. My father actually didn't agree with it at the time because it was semi-going off-grid. But at the same time, when I reflect on me being homeschooled, contrary to what you said, you know, it's important, I think sometimes schooling can be damaging and you don't get exposed to important things in life. So the way how I think now, how I analyse things, how I read, how I have a thirst for knowledge and think of opposing views, not just the typical narrative that we're fed in the media, is attributed to me being homeschooled, and I will always appreciate that. But I think where there is a safety element, like what's happened with Sara Sharif, what's happened also to a little boy in Tamworth, where the parents went off grid and they found his body in the garden, where there is that sort of element of safeguarding, yes, we should be very careful about allowing parents who have been highlighted for concerns to homeschool their children. That shouldn't be allowed.
But it's interesting because Andy made the point there that he feels like homeschooling there's almost a control element, and you can kind of see where that's coming from. And actually, you fell into that exact sort of...
It was
cookie cutter. You were in a very isolated area.
Yeah.
You were an only child, and your mother made a decision to take you out of schooling. Is that something that you would potentially do with future children?
It depends how the school system is going. At the moment, there is enough reason why I see why parents are very, very concerned with how things that are happening in school. A couple of my friends with children have gone to the school and they've said they don't appreciate, I'm not going to go into it because it's a different discussion, but certain types of topics or societal changes where they're saying we don't want our children to be exposed to this sort of thing.
And therein lies the problem, that you have a particular parent's particular point of view is then going to dictate the upbringing of a child so entirely. I think it's unhealthy.
But it hasn't.
Well, Lynn's case sounds like it was a kind of a commune, a kind of a different setup. But if you're homeschooling a child and basically your child wakes up in the morning, is schooled at home, and then spends their evening at home, they're not mixing with other children, they're not being exposed to other ideas, other cultures, other norms.
But
then I don't think that's healthy.
I think what needs to happen is the suggestion was brilliant.
Yeah.
There needs to be a register where these children are. There needs to be 3 to 6 months check-up. Can we see the syllabus that you're teaching your children? Can we see what's going on? And once that is disclosed to the authorities, there's nothing wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that homeschooling is you're going to only be teaching and dictating certain ideologies. It was the opposite for me. My mum opened up my mind to a broader scale that I would have never got in school.
I am actually very surprised that that hasn't already been the case. The bill is going through just now to make sure those checks are in place. What is in place is if the council suspects that the children aren't being educated up to a certain standard, they can do checks and they can enforce that child goes back into the school curriculum.
I would just doubt, Storm and Lynn, I would doubt how effective those checks can actually be. That if you have, say, a 6-month check, you're only seeing that child for an infinitesimally small amount of time. You know, the parent closes the door and they could be doing anything afterwards. You know, we've seen, I think this is actually a case of the fact that we've seen that authorities can check only up to a point.
But Andy, if you look at the schools now, they're overcrowded, children drop through the net, they're not getting the one-on-one care that they need if they have special needs, they're not being taught certain things that's imperative to their development. We have seen schools drop the ball time and time again.
It's a failing of the school system, I think.
Exactly.
If you are concerned about the education of your child, there is the ability to do homework with them and cover some of the topics that you don't feel were covered in the classroom. So you can do both.
Hybrid.
Have them in the classroom, socialising and getting that socialisation with the general public, as well as making sure that they are getting their schooling at home that you feel they're not getting necessarily in the classroom, potentially. But we're talking about homeschooling here, and actually whether just banning it outright will protect more children. Lynn from London, what's your thoughts on this?
Firstly, thank you to the lady who's just spoken on the homeschooling matter.
Lynn.
And I just think, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Her name is Lynn.
Yeah, I just want to say that stop trying to make it very narrow-minded on the homeschooling. Homeschooling is colourful and diverse. It allows actually for the child to be able to explore, to expand, develop themselves more holistically and organically than being like a herd of cattle stuck in one room with one teacher, you know, with particular designs on the curriculum. Which are usually very narrow. Homeschooling, can I say the matter that just happened even, it is down to the social services and that school in particular. It's okay being crocodile on the TV, giving crocodile tears by the head teacher. That school, there was a suspicion. They took the child out of the school after there was already concern over all of this brutality on the child. So the social services failed. That school failed. Immediately when the child was taken out, there should have been things in place to have a check-up on that particular child.
Lynn, I'm a bit uncomfortable with accusations of crocodile tears. I don't think for 1 minute anybody would have wanted or is okay with something like this happening. But the school did raise concerns. But unfortunately, they then took Sara out of the classroom, which meant that they didn't have eyes on her. And she was then found dead. Oh, it's a horrible story. Lynn, thank you very much for your call. Andrea from Durham, what's your view on this?
Well, basically, you've got to have a parent who's actually interested in you to start off with. I mean,
but interested could be in a negative way as well, Andrea. That is the problem, isn't it? You could have a parent that is so unbelievably invested that they want to take you away and give you this unbelievable education at the sacrifice of their own career, or you could have a parent that wants to control.
That wasn't my mother, that's for sure. But I just think at school you mix with other kids, up and down, poor, rich, whatever. You mix with other children, and that is a good thing for kids, especially with somebody like me, because I just couldn't wait to get out of the house because I didn't have a very nice mother. And it's nice just to see other people. I mean, I hated the school holidays. I absolutely hated 6 weeks off in the summer.
But would you
horrible.
ban homeschooling in its entirety?
I don't think it's a good thing.
Well, academically, children who are homeschooled do tend to do better, and in some psychological tests, they fare better with social skills and emotional maturity. So there is a lot of evidence out there to say when homeschooling is done right, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, I would never have been homeschooled anyway because my mother was never there. She worked full time. But, you know, we'd have to get somebody in. I mean, my children, I took them after school for extra lessons just to give them that little bit extra to people's houses. They went to school through the day to see all their mates and to have a play and, you know, learn something and everything.
It is kind of worrying that people are going to school just to see their mates and socialising at this point, and we're having to give them extra classes afterwards. But yes, that is absolutely another way of doing it. But Andrea, thank you very much for your call. Elizabeth from London, we're just getting lots of calls on this. What's your thoughts when it comes to homeschooling?
Hiya, yes. I couldn't agree with the first caller any more. And, you know, what you just said, the statistics, you know, speak for themselves. Children that are homeschooled have higher education, in my opinion. I think that we're not allowed to say this, but we should be speaking about this, is the education system in this country is not good, in my opinion. It's terrible. We're not teaching children to be free thinkers. We're not teaching children to really home in on their actual talents, their actual wants and needs that they want to do. We're teaching children, sit in a class, be quiet, raise your hand if you have to say something, and this is what we're going to teach you. It doesn't matter if you enjoy it, if you like it, if you're being bullied. It absolutely doesn't matter. What happened to this little girl was absolutely disgusting. But I agree with the first caller. That is the social services misjudgment, and the schools. I'm not saying the school is, you know, the head. I'm not saying anything about crocodile tears. Of course, you will be completely, you know, beside yourself to know that a child from your school has been murdered. But, sorry, go ahead.
But Elizabeth, I wonder whether you do accept that in essence of homeschooling, it is a parent taking full control of their child. Now, to a certain extent, parents do have full control over their children. They are fully responsible for their children, and nobody's going to deny that. But not allowing them access to the general public and general views and other perspectives, there could be something quite calculated about it. There could be something quite negative about that sort of mindset too.
As a parent, you're well within your rights to do that. One of the gentleman, I'm sorry, I really don't know. I don't know what his name is, but he did.
No one knows my name today.
Nobody knows anyone.
No one knows my name. Let's just accept no one knows my name. That's totally fine.
Andy and Lynn. Yes.
Lynn mentioned that there was other things that, you know, they're introducing in schools that a lot of parents won't be happy about, and he did mention, but that's the problem. But that's not the problem. As an adult with children, you should be able to steer your child in the direction that you think is best for them.
Oh, well, now there you see, I completely disagree with you, actually. I think that it's not a parent's job to brainwash their child into having the same opinions as them, or the same religion as them, or the same attitude to society as them. Children will have their own opinions, and actually what school allows you to do is to grow your own personality and come to your own conclusions about the society around you, rather than your parents imposing their own views.
Our system is not allowing you to do that. And do you know what? I'm so happy that you said that the attainment levels and the statistics actually are positive for homeschooling. And what I find frustrating is when something as horrific as this comes to light, we automatically connect it to, shall we ban homeschooling, without, when there are those positives that children are doing fantastic being homeschooled, those are never raised.
Well, we've raised them here. Elizabeth, thank you and Elizabeth has helped. Elizabeth, thank you very much for your call. Thanks very